I'm Elena, the sister of the groom, and I'm also the one who saw it all coming. Today is supposed to be the happiest day of my brother's life. But instead, I feel like I'm standing on the edge of something that could break us all apart. I've always looked out for Brian, ever since we lost our parents. I promised myself I'd take care of him. But now, he's marrying her. Her name is Jessica. A beautiful woman, or so everyone says. But there's something off about her. I can't shake the feeling. When I first met her, I thought maybe I was being too protective, but now I'm not so sure. My name is Elena, and I'm 35. I live with Brian, my younger brother, in the same house we grew up in. I work a 9-to-5 job at a law office, something simple to keep the bills paid. I'm not a mother, but in many ways, I've been the mother figure for Brian ever since the accident. That was 22 years ago. He was just a little boy, and I was in high school trying to hold it all together. It wasn't easy. I was balancing schoolwork, taking care of him, and trying to keep up with life. But we made it through somehow. We always did. Hey, Elena, you okay? Brian's voice snaps me out of my thoughts. I look up at him. He's wearing his tuxedo, looking sharp as ever. Yeah, just thinking. About Jessica? He asks, half joking. I hesitate. Not really. Just everything, you know? I've always been the one who took care of things, made sure everything was in order. But today, I can't help but feel like something's wrong. I can't put my finger on it, but I feel like there's something I missed. I want to believe that Jessica is the right one for him. I have to. It was a few days before the wedding when I first started to notice the cracks. I was at home, getting ready for another day of work, when Brian asked me about the dress I was planning to wear. I had picked a simple navy blue dress that Brian said looked best on me. It was elegant but understated. You should dress up for once, he told me. For once? I raised an eyebrow. I've always dressed up? He smiled. Not like this. You're always in your office clothes. It's time to look special. I laughed, but inside, I felt a little tug in my heart. I've always put my brother's needs first, but now I couldn't help but feel a little lost in the whirlwind of his wedding. Are you excited? I asked him, trying to shake off the strange feeling. Yeah, he said, his voice soft. It's a big step. You're going to make a great husband, I said, forcing a smile. Brian's face lit up, but I could see the hesitation in his eyes. I just want to make sure I'm doing the right thing, you know? You are, I told him, but I wasn't sure I was convincing myself. The wedding day came faster than I expected. I had my hair and makeup done in a simple, natural style. The dress was perfect, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a little bit of excitement. It wasn't for me, though. It was for Brian. This was his big day. I arrived at the venue early to greet the staff and help with any last-minute details. As I walked into the lobby, I felt a wave of warmth wash over me. Everyone was smiling, congratulating me, and I had to force myself to smile back. But there was something about the atmosphere that felt off. The wedding planner, a woman named Rachel, seemed unusually frazzled. She was moving quickly, checking her phone, speaking to different staff members. It was clear she was stressed, but what bothered me more was the way she kept sneaking glances at the bride's room. Something wasn't right. I tried to push it aside. After all, weddings were hectic. But then I heard it. A raised voice, sharp and angry. I couldn't make out the words, but I could tell it was coming from the bride's room. Rachel's face went pale as she rushed back in. I had a bad feeling. Soon, the lobby started filling up with people. First came my side of the family. Aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone who'd supported Brian and me over the years. I greeted them with a forced smile, trying to ignore the pit in my stomach. As I was talking to my aunt, who had come all the way from out of town, I noticed something. A group of Brian's friends had arrived. They were loud, laughing, and joking around like always. As they approached, one of them, a guy named Mark, waved at me. Elena, looking sharp as usual. I smiled and waved back, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The tension in the air was growing, and I couldn't ignore it. It was only when I turned toward the entrance that I saw her, Jessica. She was walking toward me, her face tight with anger. She was dressed in her white wedding gown, but there was no joy in her eyes. "Hey," she said, her voice sharp. "We need to talk." I froze. This wasn't normal. A bride doesn't leave her room before the ceremony, especially not this early. But here she was, glaring at me. "I've been watching you," she continued, her voice low. "You've been flirting with my guests all day. What do you think you're doing?" My heart sank. What was she talking about? "I'm not flirting with anyone," I said, trying to stay calm. "I'm just greeting family and friends." Jessica's eyes narrowed. "You think you're the star of this wedding? It's my day. You need to remember your place." I was speechless. How could she talk to me like that? This wasn't just rude, it was downright disrespectful. "I'm just here to support Brian," I said, trying to stay composed. "And I'm not here to compete with you. I'm his sister." "You're a middle-aged woman trying to look young in that dress. It's embarrassing." I could feel my face flush with anger, but I kept it in check. "This is the dress Brian picked for me," Jessica scoffed. "Well, he clearly has terrible taste." The wedding planner, Rachel, came up behind her, looking as if she was about to burst into tears. I could see the stress in her eyes, but Jessica wasn't done yet. "You need to leave," Jessica snapped. "You're making this wedding look bad. Just go home." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Was she seriously asking me to leave? Her tone was so condescending, I almost didn't know how to respond. "I think it's time for you to go back to your room," I said, trying to maintain some calm. "You need to get ready. There's still time before the ceremony." "Go home, Elena. I'm serious." Jessica turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, stunned. The next few moments felt like a blur. I couldn't shake the humiliation I felt, but I also couldn't let Jessica's words get to me. I knew what I had to do. But then something unexpected happened. A voice called out my name. "Elena!" It was Aunt Sarah, my father's sister. I turned to see her walking toward me, smiling as always. She was an elegant woman, always dressed to impress. "What's going on?" she asked. "Is everything okay?" Before I could respond, she handed me her phone. "Sorry, Elena. I was watching and accidentally recorded something on my phone." I looked at the screen. My heart stopped. There in the video was Jessica. She was shouting at me, berating me for no reason. The video showed everything: the insults, the anger, the condescension. "This is ridiculous," I whispered, feeling the anger bubble up inside me. "She's really gone too far." Sarah nodded. "This video could be important. You need to show it to Brian." I couldn't believe it. Brian needed to see this. I had to show him who he was marrying and what she was really like. I caught up with Brian a few minutes later. He was talking to the staff, looking distracted. When I showed him the video, his face went pale. "What is this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's Jessica. That's how she's been treating me," I said. "I think you need to know what you're getting into, Brian." He looked at me, eyes wide. I didn't know. This isn't the woman I thought she was." I nodded. I didn't want to say anything before, but I couldn't just stand by and let this happen. At that moment, Brian's face hardened. I could see the weight of the decision he was about to make. "I need to confront her," he said, his voice steady. I knew the confrontation wasn't going to be pretty, and I knew it was going to change everything. The wedding, Brian's life, maybe even the rest of our family's future. But I wasn't going to let Jessica control us anymore. I had done my best to protect Brian, but today I had to protect him from the woman he was about to marry.
Grandma, what am I gonna do now? Everything's gonna be alright, sweetheart. It won't happen fast, but I believe in you. You can do it. Those were some final words grandmother said before passing away. Melissa was sad and tears were falling down her face as she looked at her grandma. God had taken her. Melissa and her grandma had been living together since Melissa was born. Melissa didn't know her parents and never asked her grandma about them because she didn't want to make her grandma sad. Melissa also thought that her grandma didn't want to talk about her parents. Melissa always felt like her parents left her behind, maybe because they had different priorities in life. Melissa's grandmother had many visitors, both nice and not so nice. Whenever they came to visit, Melissa would stay in her room and wait for them to leave. She understood that she couldn't interrupt them because her grandmother was helping them. As time went by, Melissa grew older, and when she turned 12, she began to comprehend the world a little more. She realized that the world was different from what she had thought. Melissa believed that her grandmother knew many things that other people didn't know. As she grew older, she also began to understand those things, and it scared her. Melissa would sometimes cry in her room because of what she was seeing and comprehending. Melissa was crying again in her room when her grandma heard her. She came to her room quietly and asked if she was okay before entering. Melissa said yes and allowed her grandma to come in. "Hey, sweetie, what's wrong? I've been hearing you cry more often lately. Are you okay, darling?" "I'm scared, Grandma." "What are you scared of, honey?" Grandma asked. Melissa shared everything with her grandma, and her grandma gave her a tight hug. "Melissa, my dear, I've always been afraid that this would happen, and you would inherit my gift, but I suppose it was meant to be," her grandma said. After her grandmother passed away, Melissa was at a loss about what to do next. She was only 15 and thought that she would be sent to an orphanage and then to a foster home. Melissa didn't want that to happen, so she decided to run away and hide somewhere far away. She didn't really understand why she had made that decision, but she thought she could make it work somehow. Mr. Wesley Harris gave his daughter a kiss on the forehead and said he would try to come home earlier. Chelsea let out a sigh and said it was okay. "Dad, you don't have to feel guilty about being at work all the time. I'll be okay. Go ahead," Chelsea reassured her father. "We could do a movie night tonight. Do you want to pick something fun?" Wesley asked, trying to cheer her up. "It's okay, Dad. Don't worry. I'll be fine." "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something," Chelsea added. "What is it, sweetheart?" Mr. Harris asked. "Do you think we can try to find someone?" "Honey, are you sure?" her father asked with concern. Chelsea didn't want her father to hire a caregiver who would only provide routine medical treatments and treat her like a baby. Instead, she wanted someone who can just talk with her. She also asked not to consider the agencies. "What's up with the nurses from the agencies?" "Dad, they're not real. They're like machines, They act according to all the rules and instructions. I'm not connecting with them. They're just cold." Wesley kissed his daughter once again and said he will try to figure something out. Wesley was going to work and thinking that life is really weird. About 5 years ago, he had a family that was very happy. But now, his wife passed away in a car accident and his daughter is very sick and can't get out of bed. Wesley's spending a lot of money on her medicine, but her health is getting worse every day. The doctors are not optimistic about her condition and are saying that her illness is getting worse. At first, it wasn't so frightening. Chelsea received treatment and was living like any other child. She still needed to take medicine, but nobody was aware of it. At some point, everything changed for the worse. Chelsea began losing weight quickly and became very feeble. It's been a year and she barely leaves her bed. Sometimes she can sit up by leaning on soft pillows. Recently, she has been experiencing more pain. Every time Wesley saw his daughter in pain, his heart ached. He felt helpless and had been struggling to deal with it. Although doctors have prescribed some painkillers, they didn't seem to last long, and Chelsea was becoming more tolerant to stronger painkillers. Wesley pulled up to the parking lot outside of his office. "Mr. Harris, do you think I could go earlier today? My wife is getting discharged from the maternity ward today." Wesley's driver was looking at him through the rear view mirror. "Oh wow, congratulations." "Yeah, sure, go right ahead. Let me know if you need anything." "All good, sir. Thanks." "You can leave the keys and take a day off tomorrow if you need." Oh, can I? I appreciate it, Mr. Harris. So, is it a boy? Girl? It's a girl. We named her Melissa. Wesley smiled and said it was a beautiful name. Alright, have fun and congratulations once again. Wesley got out of the car and went to his office. Everything around was busy and full of life. People were getting married and having children, either letting happiness in or the opposite. However, at his home, everything was dull and dreary. Everyone was silently waiting for what would happen next. The most difficult aspect of everything Wesley was going through was to remain strong and not to crumble. He did his best to support his daughter and tried to smile as much as he could. Chelsea was an intelligent and mature person, and despite her condition, she was coping well. However, it was difficult for Wesley to see her in that state. He understood how tough it must be for his little girl to be confined to her bed and to realize that there was only one outcome with no hope for a better future. Mr. Harris, I need you to sign these papers, please. Wesley's secretary approached him. Angie, I need your help. I'm looking for someone who could spend time with my daughter. It doesn't have to be someone certified, not a robot from the agency, an actual human being. Oh, that's a tough one. Let me think. Someone who can spend time with your daughter and not from an agency. I guess you could try someone her age or, I don't know, someone who needs a place to stay maybe? Yeah, I guess we can try that. Alright, give me your papers to sign. Wesley completed his work early as he had promised Chelsea. He then decided to visit a convenience store to get some sweets for her. Even though the housekeeper and doctor had advised against any sugar, Wesley knew that a chocolate bar would make his daughter happy. He was aware that the housekeeper and doctor might get upset, but he wanted to bring a little joy to his daughter's day. As he was leaving the store, Wesley saw a girl standing outside with no particular purpose. He sensed that she was struggling with something internally. Although she didn't appear to be homeless or anything, Wesley remembered his own daughter and decided to talk to her and make sure she was okay. Excuse me, do you need any help? At first, the girl was scared, but then she smiled. She apologized and asked if she could have some spare change. She explained that she had run out of money and was feeling hungry. Wesley glanced around and noticed a nearby restaurant. There was a restaurant? Can I buy you some food? Thank you so much, sir. This is really embarrassing. No, you're fine. Don't worry. While on his way to the restaurant, Wesley was contemplating the girl's age. She appeared to be around 15-16 years old, just like his daughter. However, her eyes made her seem much more mature than her age. The girl was eating everything that Wesley had bought her. She was so famished that her eating made Wesley feel hungry too. At that instant, he realized that he could ask her to come with him to meet his daughter. I'm sorry, I didn't even ask your name. I'm Melissa. Melissa, where are your parents? Do you live with them? Melissa immediately stopped. I don't really know them. I used to live with my grandma at the trailer park. When she passed away 7 months ago, I moved to the city. So, do you have a place to stay? Melissa just shrugged her shoulders. I had been staying with my grandma's old friend for 5 months. I was helping out at home, cleaning, cooking and stuff, until her children took her to their home in another city. So you're saying you've got nowhere to go? I guess no. Would you like to live in our house? I have a daughter. Is she sick? How do you know? Wesley was alarmed. Melissa saw that Wesley was confused and figured she had to say something. Well, you looked tired, and as soon as I mentioned I was taking care of my grandma's friend, you instantly lit up. Then you said you had a daughter, and that's how I figured. You're quite smart. How old are you? I'll be 16 in a week. Do you have any papers with you? They're in the mall not far from here. A kind janitor let me store my things in the closet there. I help him mop the floor sometimes, and he lets me stay there. Wesley was thinking. He liked Melissa. So, what do you think? Do you want to move in with us? I mean, please don't get me wrong. We've got a nurse and a housekeeper. It's just my daughter needs someone to talk to, that's all. I understand. Yeah, I can do that. You don't even know me. You just agreed to go with me. Don't worry, I know you're telling the truth. How much do you think I should pay you? Sir, you don't have to pay either. Wesley thought Melissa was very innocent and genuine. They were in a car driving past the bright lights of the city, and Melissa was gazing out the window. Wesley saw this as an opportunity to discuss his daughter. So, Melissa, let me tell you about Chelsea. You don't really have to, If she wants to, she'll share her story with me when she's ready. Wesley agreed with a nod. He was still perplexed and curious about where Melissa had actually come from. When they got to his house, Wesley first showed Melissa her bedroom. She really liked it. It's beautiful. I've never had a bed like that. Make yourself at home. You can unpack while I step out for a bit. Melissa was thrilled with her own bedroom. She meticulously unpacked her belongings and arranged her clothes tidily in the closet. After finishing, Melissa silently left her room and walked into the hallway where Wesley was walking towards her. He stopped and said that it was time for her to meet Chelsea. Chelsea was sitting in her bed, looking out the window. "Hey, honey." Chelsea slowly turned around and smiled. "Hey, Dad." "Melissa, this is my daughter, Chelsea. And Chelsea, this is Melissa." Chelsea was looking at Melissa with great interest. "Nice to meet you, Melissa. She's a really nice young lady. I'm sure you will get along well and make really good friends," Wesley added. "Alright, you two go ahead and get to know each other. I'll go change." Melissa slowly walked over to Chelsea's bed and looked at her without saying anything. "Hi," she said. "Hi," Chelsea replied. Chelsea could feel that Melissa was looking deep into her soul. She had a weird feeling. Chelsea was a bit frightened and looked at Melissa, but then Melissa smiled. "Don't be scared. Everything's gonna be alright." Gradually, the awkward tension between them subsided and they started talking. By the time Wesley came back, Chelsea was laughing. As he walked in and saw them, he froze. He hadn't seen her beaming and heard this laughter for the last couple of years. Melissa was telling her how her grandma would have herbal teas every time to make her memory better. She kept losing her shiny things and thought that she was forgetting them somewhere, and it turned out a magpie was flying in and stealing them. "Are you guys having fun?" Chelsea turned to her dad and said, "We are, Dad." Wesley said that dinner will be ready in an hour. He was expecting a refusal from his daughter as usual. This time Chelsea said, "Dad, do you think we can move my bed to the kitchen? I want to eat there." Wesley was shocked. "Of course, honey, let me get the chair instead." They had purchased a special chair for her a long time ago, but Chelsea never used it. She had totally been against it. Wesley instructed the housekeeper to prepare a table for 3 people, which surprised her. However, when she noticed Chelsea chatting animatedly with another girl, she quickly got to work. Chelsea couldn't eat a lot, but she had a hearty appetite. It was peculiar and uncommon. It was the first time she ate well. For a brief moment, Wesley began to question what the doctors had told him, but he realized that doctors from 3 different countries can be wrong at the same time. Before going to bed, Melissa noticed that Chelsea was curled up in pain. "Melissa, can you call the housekeeper? I need a shot." But Melissa walked up to Chelsea and put her palm on top of her head. After a minute, Chelsea began to feel that the pain was subsiding. She had never felt anything like that before. She wanted to ask how Chelsea was doing that, but she couldn't. Her eyes were drooping and she felt like she was falling asleep. Melissa stood up to shut the door and saw the housekeeper hurrying to give Chelsea a shot. "Excuse me, ma'am. She's better. She fell asleep." "What do you mean she's sleeping? What about the housekeeper peered inside and saw Chelsea was indeed asleep. "That's impossible." 2 weeks passed and Chelsea had changed a lot. Wesley was astonished. He saw how Melissa was leading her by the hand carefully. For the first time in the last few years, Chelsea got out into the yard. Wesley couldn't believe what he was seeing, but he was still wary that it could be something temporary. "Mr. Harris, where did you find this girl?" the housekeeper asked. "You won't believe it, but I met her on the street outside a store. Is everything okay?" "Yeah, everything's fine. I don't know how to say this, but she's a bit strange. She knows everything. The other day she predicted that it was going to rain in 10 minutes. She told me that my son's sore throat needs to be treated with some kind of herb. Look how much Chelsea has changed. Are you telling me she's some kind of clairvoyant or something?" "I don't know. I don't really believe those things, but I just don't understand how." Wesley smiled, but he agreed with the housekeeper. Melissa had a piercing gaze. In the morning, Wesley was getting ready for work. Melissa walked out to him from her room. "Mr. Harris, do you have to go to work today?" "Yes. Is everything okay?" "Can you stay home today, please?" "Why, Melissa? What's going on?" "I have a lot of things to do at the office." Melissa kept begging him not to go anywhere and tell his driver to stay in the city today. Wesley didn't know why he agreed to listen to her in the end. He decided he could probably work from home today. When he turned on the TV, he saw that there was a terrible accident on the highway involving a dozen cars. It happened exactly at the exit he was supposed to take, and at around the time he usually passes through that area. He immediately got a call from his driver. The driver talked for a while and thanked Mr. Harris for letting him stay in the city today. Wesley got up and headed for Melissa's room. He couldn't take it anymore. He really wanted to know who she really was. He knocked on her door, but there was no response. Then he walked towards Chelsea's room, and as he was approaching, he heard loud noises. They were arguing about something. He stood behind the slightly open door and looked through. Melissa was shouting at Chelsea. "Get up now." "I can't." "Who told you you can't?" "But I'm really sick. I can't walk. I'm not supposed to walk." "But you're still alive. Give me your hand." Wesley froze because Chelsea put her right foot on the floor, then the left. And then she got up. She wobbled immediately and Wesley was about to lunge, but Melissa had already had her shoulder up for her. "There you go. Good job," Melissa told Chelsea. "And you were telling me you were destined to be in bed." Chelsea burst out laughing. "Oh my God, I'm standing! I can't believe it!" Wesley quietly stepped back. He didn't care who Melissa really was. A witch, a clairvoyant, a psychic. If she could get Chelsea to walk and become healthy again, he was ready to pray for her until the day he died and take care of her like his own daughter. 3 months later, after tests, the doctors were confused. "I don't know what to say, Mr. Harris. I don't think we were wrong. Only a miracle could have happened, but miracles don't happen, unfortunately." He wasn't really sure about his last words, though. Miracle did happen, and Chelsea became a healthy girl again. Melissa continued living in the family. Wesley told her he will take care of her until she decides to move on her own.
"I've always hated how you're just lounging around all day, not working or earning a cent," Miranda, my mother-in-law, shouted at me, waving a kitchen knife dangerously close. My heart pounded like a drum. I feared she might really kill me. "Why don't you say something?" she snarled, stepping closer, her eyes cold and furious. "Please, Miranda, put down the knife. I'm begging you," I managed to say, my voice trembling. It wasn't me who wasn't earning. It was Frank, my husband, who hadn't brought in a dime. But now, as Miranda came toward me, I had no choice but to leave. 2 years ago, I moved in with Frank and his mother after my father-in-law's sudden passing. "Karen, I'm really grateful you decided to move into my parents' house. Thank you," Frank had told me. At the time, it felt like the right choice, a chance to help out while Frank looked for work after losing his job. "If you want, feel free to stay here. It's better than struggling in an apartment," Miranda had suggested shortly after her husband's funeral. Frank was eager to take her up on it, as the house was spacious and moving would save us money. Despite my worries, I hadn't known Miranda very well. I took the plunge. In the beginning, things were comfortable. We led a simple life, and on weekends, Frank and I could even go out on dates, something we hadn't done since our financial problems began. I began to feel like maybe we could make this arrangement work. I put my fears aside and decided to make the best of it. But only 3 months into our new arrangement, Miranda's behavior began to change. "Karen, you're living in my house, yet you don't even bother doing the cleaning or laundry?" she snapped one evening. I did clean, almost every day after work, but Miranda kept finding fault. Her tone grew more demanding, her attitude harsher. "You're supposed to take care of everything since you're staying here. Wasn't it you who wanted to move in?" she continued, her words cutting like a blade. From then on, life became a nightmare. Miranda harassed me daily, demanding I do all the household chores without any rest, even after long days at work. Her criticisms never stopped, and eventually, the mental strain broke me down. Frank, meanwhile, didn't seem to care. He ignored the tension between Miranda and me, brushing it off as something I should handle on my own. One day, I couldn't even get out of bed due to a high fever. Miranda, I'm really sick. Could you please help with the housework today? I asked, barely able to speak. What? You want me to do it? Don't be ridiculous. A cold is no excuse. Get up and work, she barked. Too ill to argue, I forced myself out of bed and tried to keep up, but I ended up vomiting from exhaustion. Later, while I was trying to catch my breath on the living room sofa, Miranda hit me, forcing me back up. You have no time to rest. Get moving, she yelled. I looked to Frank for help, but he just shrugged and avoided eye contact. I'm busy, he muttered before disappearing into another room. I felt utterly alone, trapped in a house where no one cared whether I lived or died. Things came to a head one morning when I couldn't go to work because I was still too weak. Miranda noticed my car was still parked outside. Why aren't you at work? She demanded. I'm still sick. I took a day off, I said, hoping for some sympathy. Instead, her face twisted in rage. You're just a lazy leech, aren't you? Not earning anything and just sleeping all day. Get out of my house. She grabbed a knife from the kitchen and pointed it at me, her eyes filled with fury. My body froze, my heart pounding in my ears. I felt death was just moments away. Finally, I found my voice. Okay, I'll leave. Just please put the knife down, I pleaded. Then leave now, she screamed, still clutching the knife. Frank, hearing the commotion, rushed into the room and intervened, managing to get Miranda to lower the knife. That was my chance. I ran to my car and drove away, heading for my parents' house. As I drove, a mix of anger and fear welled up inside me. I had tolerated too much from Miranda and Frank. Brandishing a knife at me was crossing a line, and I wasn't going to let it slide. I stopped at a nearby grocery store parking lot and called the police, reporting what had just happened. I didn't want to go back to that house. Not now, not ever. The police took my report over the phone, and I told them about all the times Miranda had assaulted me. They promised to visit the house to speak with her. Afterward, I continued my journey to my parents' home, hoping I'd finally be safe. That night, I ignored several missed calls from both Miranda and Frank. I didn't want anything to do with either of them. When I finally picked up, Miranda screamed at me, demanding I come back. You left Frank. You called the police on me, she shouted. You told me to leave while threatening me with a knife, I replied. I'm not coming back. Frank called next, asking me to reconsider the divorce I'd mentioned in anger. He said he was trying to find work, but I'd heard it all before. I had no reason to trust him anymore. The next day, divorce papers arrived at my parents' home. I signed them without hesitation. A few weeks later, I received a call from the police. Miranda has been arrested for threatening you with a knife, the officer informed me. She wants to settle. What do you want to do? No way. I'm not settling, I said. I was done with Miranda and her toxic influence. Hearing that she'd been arrested felt like a weight lifted off my shoulders. Soon after, Frank showed up at my parents' home, pleading with me to return. He claimed he couldn't make ends meet without my income. It was pathetic, really. A grown man begging me to support him when he still had no job. I told him to leave and not come back, but he kept returning week after week, sometimes yelling from the doorstep. One day, during one of his desperate visits, I had enough. If you come here again, I'll call the police, I shouted, finally losing my patience. A week later, he called me, threatening to kill both himself and me if I didn't return. That was it. I reported him to the police. Frank was arrested shortly thereafter, and with him and Miranda both in jail, I finally felt some semblance of peace. I knew it wasn't over. They could come back once they were released, so my parents and I decided to move. Safety was more important than staying in the same home. 2 years later, I remarried a kind man I met through work. Unlike Frank, he was hardworking, considerate, and supportive. We were expecting a child, and I couldn't have been happier. Life with Frank and Miranda had been nothing but hardship. But now, with a loving partner by my side, I finally looked forward to a brighter future. Every day felt like a fresh start, and I began to appreciate the small joys of life, cooking meals together, decorating the nursery, and planning our future. My new husband treated me with the love and respect I had always longed for. He understood my past without judgment and promised me that our home would always be a safe space. But sometimes, late at night, I still thought about Miranda and Frank. I wondered if they had learned anything during their time in jail. Would they change, or were they still the same toxic people I had left behind? I hoped they had learned, but I wasn't willing to find out. My parents and I had moved far enough away that no one from my past knew where to find us. We had new phone numbers, new jobs, and a new beginning. I had even started taking online classes, something I had put off for years while dealing with the stress of my previous life. It felt good to do something for myself for a change. My husband and I would often take long walks in the evenings, discussing baby names and dreaming about the future. He knew what I had been through, and he was determined to help me build a better life. I felt loved, cherished, and most importantly, safe. One day, I received a letter in the mail. There was no return address, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. It was Frank's. My heart skipped a beat and a chill ran down my spine. I debated whether or not to open it. After all this time, why was he contacting me now? Against my better judgment, I tore the envelope open and began to read. Frank's words were desperate, pleading. He said he had changed, that he was a different man now, and that he wanted me to give him another chance. He wrote about how lonely he was, how hard it had been without me, and how much he regretted everything that had happened. I put the letter down, my hands trembling. For a moment, I felt a pang of sadness for the man I had once loved. But that sadness quickly turned into anger. Frank had made his choices, and he had to live with the consequences. I had moved on, and I wasn't about to let him drag me back into that dark place. That night, I talked to my husband about the letter. He held me close and reassured me that I was safe. "You don't have to respond," he said gently. "You owe him nothing." And he was right. I owed Frank nothing. Not my time, not my sympathy, and certainly not my forgiveness. The next morning, I shredded the letter and threw it away. It was time to let go of the past completely. I had a new life, a new family on the way, and a future that was bright and full of promise. There was no room for Frank or Miranda in that future. Months passed, and our baby was born, a beautiful, healthy little girl. As I held her in my arms, I knew that everything I had endured had led me to this moment. The pain, the fear, the uncertainty. It had all been worth it to get here. I looked down at my daughter and promised her that she would always be safe, that she would always be loved, and that no one would ever make her feel the way I had been made to feel. With my husband by my side, we left the hospital as a family, ready to start this new chapter together. The past was behind us, and the future was ours to write. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly free.
Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
That day, Andrea woke early, tidied the space she called her own, and hastened to the store. Every Thursday, they distributed expired products for free, and Andrea had become adept at seizing this opportunity. As she neared an unfinished house, a faint whimper from the bushes caught her ear. Startled, she thought, "Who's there? Have they dumped another helpless creature? What heartless souls they are." Without a second thought, she approached, only to find a basket cradling a newborn. The sight rendered Andrea speechless. She stood frozen, her thoughts racing. Who could have left this innocent soul here? Gently lifting the baby, Andrea was greeted with a coo and a smile. Beneath the child was a note. Without pausing to read it, Andrea's instincts kicked in. She must first cater to the baby's immediate needs. En route home, she darted into the store, grabbing baby food, a bottle, and a pacifier. A nagging worry plagued her. What if someone assumes I've taken this child? Are they searching for her? Yet, the world around seemed indifferent to the sight of a ragged woman cradling a baby. Once home, Andrea swiftly changed the baby's diaper. Thankfully, an extra was in the basket and fed her. The infant soon drifted into a serene sleep. Andrea then unfolded the note to reveal a poignant message, written with care. I'm sorry, I can no longer care for my daughter. I lack the strength and means. The note was unsigned, offering no clue to the baby's identity or origin. Overwhelmed, Andrea sank into her couch, wrestling with the gravity of her discovery. Her pulse quickened, and countless thoughts swirled. Should she approach the authorities? Perhaps place the child in an orphanage? Or dare she embrace this unexpected chance at motherhood? Perhaps this was destiny's gift to her. Andrea chose to take the risk. The pull of the infant was too strong. She smelled of the sweet innocence of milk and infancy, her smiles genuine and serene. Andrea named her Esperanza, symbolizing hope. The child's presence breathed new life into Andrea, sparking in her a newfound hope for motherhood, something that seemed impossible just the day before. While Esperanza slept, Andrea dashed to the nearest discount store, purchasing gently used baby clothes, food, diapers, and even a small bathtub. That evening, with the stove warming their humble abode, Andrea bathed the baby. Emotion welled up as she felt the delicate touch of Esperanza's tiny hands and feet, the warm water splashing as she gently washed her. The little one appeared to be around 6 months old. She could sit up slightly and bubbled with joyful gurgles. Andrea sang her lullabies, and once Esperanza drifted off, Andrea found herself reflecting on her own past. Truth be told, Andrea's childhood was devoid of joy. In fact, it barely qualified as a childhood. Hers was a tale of survival amidst the hardships of an orphanage, haunted by the memories of her family's dysfunction, her mother's inebriated cries for sustenance, and her stepfather's cruel blows. Andrea's circumstances became so dire that concerned neighbors intervened, resulting in her placement in an orphanage at the tender age of 4. Life there wasn't a walk in the park either, yet she received the basic necessities. She was a diligent student, earning the affection of the caregivers. However, this only fueled the jealousy of her peers, who ostracized and taunted her, fearing she'd be a tattletale. Andrea loathed the orphanage, crossing off days on a calendar as she awaited her emancipation. Her self-image wasn't the best. She saw herself as gangly, perpetually hungry, and clumsy. The radiant hue of her red hair and her freckles, which janitor Vasily praised, only made her a target of mockery. Although Vasily would often remark, "Oh, Andrea, your hair shines like sunlight," she would dismissively retort, "Sunlight? I'm tired of being teased for being a redhead with freckles." Vasily would simply shake his head and reassure her. Upon leaving the orphanage, Andrea inherited an aging house on the city's outskirts. It wasn't much, but it was hers. Her job hunt was tough due to her lack of formal education and experience, but she eventually found work as a cafe waitress. Through sheer determination and hard work, Andrea carved out a place for herself on the team. It was here that she met Federico. The dark-eyed construction worker was instantly smitten by Andrea's fiery spirit and radiant hair. The two began dating, and in time, tied the knot. Though Federico wasn't wealthy, he was resourceful and skilled. He transformed Andrea's humble dwelling into a cozy sanctuary, and their life together was filled with harmony. Soon, to their mutual delight, Andrea became pregnant. Their happiness knew no bounds, and they began making plans, optimistic about their future. On the day everything changed, there were no dark omens or premonitions. Federico left for a nearby settlement to purchase lumber for the new fence they had planned to erect, as the old one was deteriorating. As was customary, Andrea kissed him goodbye and hurried off to work. By evening, a gnawing worry set in. Federico had not yet returned. Thoughts raced through her mind. Had there been an accident? Perhaps the truck broke down. But surely, Federico would have called. In her growing panic, she dialed his number repeatedly, only to find it switched off. Overcome with dread, Andrea called the police and local hospitals. That's when she received the devastating news. Federico had been involved in a fatal car accident. The days that followed were a blur, mourning, condolences, and an abyss of grief. Consumed by sorrow, Andrea could hardly cope, and a month after Federico's funeral, she suffered a miscarriage. It happened abruptly, in the dead of night. While the medical team managed to stabilize her, the baby could not be saved. If that wasn't enough, an ensuing infection led to complications, requiring Andrea to spend weeks in the hospital. To add to her torment, the doctors delivered heart-wrenching news. Regrettably, due to your current health circumstances, you won't be able to bear children in the future. We're truly sorry. When she was finally discharged, Andrea, heavy-hearted and bereft, yearned for the comfort of home. But as she neared her house, she was met with a gut-wrenching sight. All that remained was a smoldering pile of ashes. Everything had been consumed by fire: mementos, furniture, the very walls that had surrounded her. According to neighbors, the old wiring was the culprit. The house had, after all, stood for about a century. Lost and homeless, Andrea sought assistance from local authorities. While they placed her on a waiting list for housing, they provided no immediate solution. The curt response she received was, "It was your private property, and the fire occurred due to negligence. We're not obligated to offer housing. Don't you have any relatives or friends who could shelter you temporarily? Otherwise, consider renting a place." The distraught woman made her way to the cafe where she used to work, clinging to the hope that she might be able to rent a room with her salary. But even this hope was dashed. During her husband's funeral and her subsequent hospitalization, her position had been filled by another. No one had even bothered to inform her. Desperate, Andrea implored the cafe owner, presenting her hospital documentation as proof, but her pleas fell on deaf ears. Since she had been working off the books, she had no legal ground to stand on, and no recourse. In a cruel twist of fate, Andrea found herself bereft of her husband, unborn child, home, and employment. It was a convergence of misfortunes that few could imagine. Despair consumed her, and she roamed the streets aimlessly, a vacant look in her eyes. She envied the purposeful strides of passers-by, all seemingly immersed in their lives. Come nightfall, she'd find herself seated on a bench, much like a stray dog, gazing longingly into the windows of strangers, catching glimpses of their bustling lives. She felt like a castaway, superfluous in a world that seemed to have moved on. She resorted to begging and sought solace in alcohol, hoping to numb her pain for a few fleeting moments. Train stations and park benches became her makeshift beds. One fateful evening, deep in an alcohol-induced slumber, Federico appeared in a dream. He pointed at her reproachfully. "Don't you dare give up. What have you turned into? This isn't you." Awakening to a cold drizzle on her face and discomfort from the hard bench beneath her, she cried out in anguish. "Federico! Why? Why did you leave me this way? How can you reprimand me? What's left for me here? I'm a burden, unwanted by anyone. I'll end it all right here under this tree. I long to be with you. Why should I go on? For whom? For what purpose?" As her words hung in the air, a deafening clap of thunder sounded, and a bolt of lightning split the sky, striking the very poplar tree she'd been under. It was left in two smoldering halves. A torrential downpour ensued, blurring her surroundings. Terrified, Andrea dropped to her knees, making the sign of the cross, murmuring, "Forgive me, Federico. I understand now. I'll forsake the drink. Just don't be wrathful." Dawn brought with it a newfound resolve. Andrea discovered an abandoned house on the town's fringes and inquired among the locals if she could take up residence there. An elderly woman simply gestured dismissively, saying. After hearing Andrea's story, the elderly woman, moved by her tale, gathered some items for her. "Take these old beddings, curtains, and clothes. My daughter outgrew them years ago, and they aren't in style anymore. They might be of use to you. With time, things will turn around." Holding back tears, Andrea replied, "Thank you for your generosity. I promise to make this house a home." Over the next few weeks, Andrea dedicated herself to cleaning and repairing the house. Her hard work and resilience endeared her to the neighbors, who began to offer her assistance. Before long, Andrea secured a job as a janitor at a nearby housing complex, giving her a stable income. The humiliations of begging were behind her. She dreamt of cultivating the neglected garden and began to budget wisely, often opting for discounted groceries. The loss of her husband still weighed heavily on Andrea's heart. He often visited her dreams, a comforting presence she felt even in waking life. Yet a profound emptiness remained. She yearned for motherhood. During her early morning shifts, she would watch parents accompanying their children to school, their hands intertwined, their conversations filled with love and concern. Her heart ached, desiring the closeness of a child of her own. Nights were the hardest, as she wept for both her lost husband and the child she'd never hold. The idea of adoption crossed her mind, but her circumstances seemed prohibitive. Fortunately, her personal documents had been spared from the fire, and she treasured Federico's photo, which she kept in her passport, like a protective charm. But as Andrea gazed at Esperanza, who was now peacefully asleep in a chair, a newfound determination welled up within her. She wouldn't part with the child, regardless of the challenges ahead. The prospect of sending Esperanza to an orphanage was unthinkable. She thought, if I keep her, I'll shower her with love and ensure she's safe, even if it means going without. But how can I get her properly documented? We can't move forward without them. The following day, Andrea, with a sense of determination, dressed in her best attire and took young Esperanza to the guardianship office. With tears in her eyes, she pleaded, "Please help me. This is my daughter, Esperanza, and she's 6 months old. I need to have her registered and obtain a birth certificate for her." The officials exchanged glances of disbelief. "How is this possible? Did you not give birth in a hospital? Didn't they register her birth? How can this happen in this day and age?" Taking a deep breath, Andrea responded, "No, I wasn't registered. I'm homeless, and I gave birth to her on the street. It might not be common, but it's my reality. Now I have a place to stay and I intend to raise my daughter right. She needs documents to lead a proper life." After a brief discussion, the officials decided to assist Andrea. Observing her demeanors tidy, if not well-dressed, and clear of any sign of substance abuse, coupled with the fact that Esperanza looked well cared for, they felt compelled to help. They took a few months to finalize the paperwork, and once completed, they handed them to Andrea, advising, "Ensure you register her at the local clinic for regular checkups. Now, officially, you're a mother. Take care." Overwhelmed with gratitude, Andrea said, "Thank you, truly. May you be blessed." As she left the building, clutching the documents and cradling Esperanza, a surge of joy filled her heart. "Federico, it feels like you've been watching over us, guiding us." There's no other explanation. Life began anew for Andrea. Every day at dawn, she'd be out sweeping streets with Esperanza nestled in her basket, sometimes dozing, sometimes babbling away. If she fussed, Andrea would pause her work, rushing to the nearest store for provisions or tending to her needs. The days were grueling, but a single whimper from Esperanza would reinvigorate her. The years sped by in a whirlwind of caregiving and work. Some neighbors and acquaintances, noticing the child but recalling no signs of Andrea's pregnancy, would quip, "Andrea, where did this little one come from? We never saw you pregnant." With a knowing smile, Andrea would respond, "Discovered her amidst the cabbage leaves." Andrea said with a twinkle in her eye, "That's my girl. Perhaps my frame kept my pregnancy subtle, but she's mine through and through." As the years went by, Esperanza blossomed into a girl with an insatiable curiosity. She had a penchant for books and art, and often she'd be found helping Andrea around their humble abode. As summer waned and the scent of autumn was in the air, Esperanza was gearing up for her first day in school. Andrea, with her indomitable spirit, took up every odd job the season offered, from selling garden-fresh veggies to cleaning neighboring homes, ensuring Esperanza wouldn't feel out of place among her peers. Decked in her crisp new uniform with a fresh backpack, when Esperanza stepped into school, Andrea's eyes welled up. "Oh, the joys of motherhood," she thought, feeling a pang of gratitude. If no one searched for my darling, it's their loss. She was destined for me. One crisp afternoon, the air filled with the scent of fallen leaves, Esperanza returned home, her little face a palette of mischief and mystery. Mom, she began hesitantly, her eyes darting towards the hallway where her coat was still draped over her. Would you be terribly mad if I showed you a little secret? Andrea, ever the curious soul, responded with bemusement. Well now, let's see what's got you so animated. Show me, dear. From beneath the folds of her coat, Esperanza gently revealed a waifish gray kitten, its big eyes filled with a mix of curiosity and fear. Its pitiful meow echoed softly. Esperanza's voice trembled with passion. The boys, Mom. They found him near school and they were so cruel. Lobo even tied a can to his tiny tail. I couldn't bear it. I had to save him. Can he stay? Andrea, her heart swelling with pride, hugged the kitten close, feeling its fragile heartbeat. Oh, my love, of course he can. You've done a beautiful thing today. This little one needs a name though. With a twinkle mirroring her mother's, Esperanza declared, Zorro. He'll be our little warrior. As they settled Zorro with some warm milk, the kitten, sensing safety and warmth, promptly curled up on Esperanza's lap, purring his gratitude. Rest now, Zorro, Esperanza whispered gently, stroking his fur. You're home. And one day, you'll be our fierce mouse hunter. Interrupting their tender moment, Andrea softly chimed, lunchtime, darling. The soup's about to lose its warmth. Esperanza, placing a gentle finger to her lips, whispered, just a bit longer, Mom. Let Zorro dream. With soft eyes, looking at the peacefully slumbering Zorro on her lap, Esperanza whispered, Mom, Zorro's just found solace in his dreams. Can he linger a little longer? Do forgive me, but how could I possibly disturb him now? Just a moment more, promise? A tender smile touched Andrea's lips as she ran her fingers through Esperanza's hair. Take your time, sweet girl. We can always reheat the meal. Thus, the symphony of their lives now had a new, playful note named Zorro. Whether it was chasing after balls of yarn or basking in the sun, the small home resonated with the laughter and purrs of their new family member. One crisp evening, as the aroma of a freshly cooked meal wafted from the kitchen, Andrea's focus was suddenly diverted from her cooking. A parade of cars, quite out of place in their humble surroundings, pulled up. From the most regal of them, a man emerged, knocking lightly on the window before proceeding to the gate. Cautiously, Andrea peered out, her heart skipping a beat. The silhouette bore an uncanny resemblance to Federico, her late husband. The man, sensing her unease, began, Greetings. You are Andrea, I presume? I am Victor, Esperanza's biological father. May I enter? We have matters to discuss. Andrea, her heart pounding, gasped, Federico? My love, I thought. I believed you were gone. Is this an apparition? A cruel trick of my mind? Overwhelmed by the rush of emotions, Andrea swooned, collapsing at the entrance. When she next opened her eyes, the concerned face of Victor hovered over her. He was patting her face gently, a hint of panic in his eyes. Catching his breath, he exclaimed, I'm so relieved you've come around. I'm not Federico, I assure you. My name is Victor. Perhaps I bear some resemblance, but it's purely coincidental. Are you all right now? Andrea's fingers danced across the tender spot on her temple. With a soft sigh, she looked deep into the stranger's eyes and murmured, It's not that I think you're a figment of my imagination. You bear an uncanny resemblance to my late husband, Federico. Her voice trembled, I must show you. From the depths of her worn passport, she retrieved a photograph, which she handed over with trembling hands. The stranger's gaze sharpened, and his face turned a shade paler as he gazed at the image. This defies all reason, he breathed, stunned. Our resemblance is striking. This isn't just a twist of fate. I now grasp the depth of your shock earlier. His eyes softened. Forgive me for startling you. Where's the young girl? My explanation is due, she's my child. With a defiant lift to her chin, Andrea shot back, whatever mystery you wish to unravel is yours alone. As far as the world and its laws are concerned, Esperanza is mine. Every beat of my heart belongs to her. Now, I suggest you leave. Her voice was firm but tinged with distress. I've revealed more than I should, and I have a meal to prepare. Gently but firmly, she ushered the man out, silently battling the tempest of emotions within. To think I was visited by a ghost. And this stranger, asserting his claim on my Esperanza. Where was he during all these silent years? Bursting into our lives from the shadows. But I will stand my ground. She is mine in every way that matters. Soon, the sound of Esperanza's laughter washed over her, recounting tales of her day, gleefully slurping down the warm cabbage soup. Andrea's heart warmed, every moment with her daughter infused her soul with purpose and joy. The days passed. One cold Sunday, as snowflakes danced from the sky, Andrea and Esperanza were outside, laughing as they attempted to place a rebellious carrot nose on their snowman. The distant hum of a car engine grew louder, and once again, the familiar stranger appeared. This time, he came bearing a beautifully wrapped package and a lush, fragrant Christmas tree. Andrea, instead of a welcoming greeting, muttered unfriendly words. "Oh, it's you again? What do you want now? I thought I made myself clear last time." Victor, undeterred by Andrea's icy demeanor, greeted them with a warmth that juxtaposed the winter chill. "Greetings, all. May I step in? I come bearing gifts, almost like a wintry fairy tale. Might I join you?" With a magician's flourish, he deftly affixed the carrot to the snowman's face. Esperanza's eyes danced with delight. "You have a craftsman's touch. I'm Esperanza, and beside me is my mother, Andrea. Presents are among my favorite things. Mother, why this frost towards our guest? See how he's brightened our day with that tree?" In the face of her daughter's gleeful enthusiasm, Andrea's resistance melted away. She gestured a resigned invitation, much like a leaf succumbing to the autumn wind. Victor's gaze flitted between the two, admiration evident. Andrea, with her fiery locks and sparkling emerald eyes, held an allure far more genuine than the masked sophisticates he often encountered. Beneath her unassuming attire, there was an undeniable grace. Esperanza, with the same fiery charm, mirrored a love and respect for her mother that was palpable. In them, Victor saw an authentic bond, something that often eluded his own opulent world. As Andrea ushered them to the dining area, her eyes silently pleaded with Victor to tread carefully, to protect the innocence of the moment from the looming shadows of the past. The spread was humble yet rich in love, a hearty vegetable stew followed by fragrant pastries. Coupled with Victor's contributions, the table was a visual and olfactory feast. As they ate, Victor's voice, filled with genuine appreciation, broke the thickening silence. "Andrea, in my life, I've indulged in the finest of cuisines, from exquisite lobsters to the rarest caviars. Yet, this stew, prepared with love and care, surpasses them all. Thank you for this genuine feast." But Andrea, lost in a tumult of thoughts, barely registered the compliment. The looming question tugged at her heartstrings: could he truly be Esperanza's father? Time might reveal truths that could shatter our world. If the winds change, might I lose her forever? After lunch, the man started giving out presents. Esperanza squealed with joy when she saw the genuine, expensive Barbie doll and a huge bag full of candies and sweets. Victor handed a small red box to the woman and said, "This is for you, a heartfelt gift." But Andrea pushed it aside without even looking and whispered, "I'm not Esperanza, I'm not a 7-year-old. Don't try to appease or buy me off. I know why you've come. I won't give my daughter to you, don't even dream about it. Now, let's decorate the Christmas tree so that Esperanza doesn't get upset, and please, leave." Victor also whispered, "All right, I'll leave, but only after we talk. Otherwise, it's no use. I need to tell you many things. I hope, after that, you'll change your mind." They all continued to decorate the fluffy Christmas tree, hanging ornaments and garlands that Victor had brought. Esperanza was thrilled with the colorful, shimmering balls since all those years they had only had a modest fir branch decorated with candies and cotton. Then the girl asked, "Mommy, can I quickly run to Rebecca and tell her everything? I can't wait. She'll be so jealous, especially when she sees my Barbie. She doesn't have one like that. She always mocks my old doll." Andrea smiled. "Sure, but don't take too long. Be back home for dinner. And don't even think about going out by yourselves, especially to the river. The ice is still thin, you could drown." The girl solemnly promised not to go anywhere without asking and happily ran off to her best friend. The woman let out a sigh of relief and said to the guest, "I'm all ears. Now tell me everything you wanted, and then leave, once and for all." Victor sat on the couch and began quietly. "It will be a long conversation. Let me start from the beginning, and about Esperanza. So, my name is Victor Montero. I'm the son of a wealthy businessman. Naturally, I had everything I could wish for and even more in my childhood. My father is a good man, but he raised me strictly. He made sure I studied diligently and didn't engage in any inappropriate activities. However, my relationship with my mother was always tense. It's like she hated me from an early age. I felt hurt and couldn't understand why she treated me that way. When I was in college, I met Paulina. She was an orphan and worked at a local car wash. We fell deeply in love. However, my parents disapproved. Well, my father was surprisingly neutral, saying it was my life and my choice. But my mother threw tantrums and did everything in her power to break us up. Still, I went against her wishes, and Paulina and I decided to get married. Everything was going well until a week before the wedding, when she disappeared, vanished into thin air. She didn't answer my calls, and I searched everywhere, but all in vain. That's what happened. Many years have passed, but I still couldn't forget Paulina. I pursue my passion in my work, but my personal life has never worked out. I haven't found the right person. Recently, my mother fell seriously ill, a severe illness, and she decided to tell me the whole truth. It turns out, Paulina didn't run away at all. Instead, my mother came to our rented apartment and started weaving lies, claiming that I already had a fiancé and a wedding was imminent, and Paulina was just a fling. She threatened her, saying that she would ruin her life if she didn't leave mine forever, and so on. When I found out about this, I was furious, to the brink. I decided to find out what happened to Paulina. What's her fate? I thought if it's not too late, I should go and repent, explain everything. I hired a private detective who found out everything for me. He told me that after my mother drove her away, Paulina moved to the outskirts, rented a room at first, then found out she was pregnant with my child, and she gave birth. I even saw the record of the child's birth at the hospital. But according to the neighbors, the child disappeared. They haven't seen him or Paulina since then. Paulina herself fell into a prolonged depression, started drinking heavily, and seemed to spiral down due to everything she had gone through, and then died from alcoholism. The detective found her grave, and I sometimes go there. He is a true professional in his field and made every effort to find the daughter. First, he checked all the orphanages, but the girl was not there. Then, he hypothesized that Paulina might have left the child somewhere near her home. By piecing together small clues, he discovered that you, Andrea, suddenly had a 6-month-old daughter, although the neighbors claimed you were never pregnant. It all matched up when he compared the time of Paulina's delivery and when your daughter appeared. The baby was about 6 months old at that time. Considering that you lived very modestly, and even in a rundown house, the possibility of adoption is ruled out. No one would have given you a child, forgive me for saying so. So, I am absolutely sure that Esperanza is my daughter. She also bears a resemblance to me. Just look at her, the same brown eyes and curly black hair. Only her nose and facial features resemble Paulina. I can see it. I insist on a genetic test. Let's do it to erase any doubts. please, don't think that I want to take your daughter away or challenge your motherhood. You fear that, right? But don't worry. I just want to meet my daughter, be involved in her upbringing, and help her. It will benefit both of us. I see how difficult your life is. Is it fitting for a girl to grow up in such conditions? Please, don't push me away. I beg you. Just like for you, the arrival of a daughter in my life is a ray of hope. Such happiness. So, don't deprive me of it. Andrea listened without interrupting and was astonished at how the fate of this poor Paulina intertwined with her own. She felt immense pity for this broken woman. After all, she was not at fault in anything. No one extended a helping hand in time. Moreover, Victor was not such a villain. He didn't know anything. And she had treated him so harshly, threw him out the first time they met. She replied softly, "Forgive me, I didn't know all the details." Well, if it's all true, then, of course, let's do the genetic test. But please understand, I didn't steal the baby. I found her in a basket and was overjoyed. I didn't want to send her to an orphanage. I'm an orphan myself, and I know how terrifying and bad it is there. I am childless after a miscarriage, so I was happy to have found a daughter. Admittedly, we don't live in luxury, that's true, but I try to buy her new things, even if they are not expensive. I work as a janitor and sell vegetables from my garden at the market, all for the sake of my little girl. I wasn't always destitute. I had a beloved husband, Federico, our own home, and together we did the repairs there. I got pregnant, and then... She suddenly choked up and burst into tears, covering her face with her hands, unable to cope with her memories. Victor continued quietly, "I know, the detective told me everything about you. You have also had such a difficult and broken fate." Andrea wiped away her tears and asked, "What about the resemblance between you and my late husband? Did you find out anything about that?" "It troubles me." Victor continued, "Yes, I found out everything. My mother recently confessed everything. It turns out she was already married before my father and had twins, my brother and me. But they divorced shortly after, and they decided to split everything amicably, including the children. Her first husband, Nicholas, was supposed to leave the city, so my brother and I would never meet. Isn't it sacrilegious? How could one come up with such a thing? To separate twins? Prevent them from seeing each other and communicating? However, Nicholas didn't stay long in an unfamiliar city and soon returned home. So, it turns out that your husband, Federico, was raised by my father alone, and they lived poorly, just scraping by. Meanwhile, my mother married a millionaire, my stepfather. When I found out about this, I was so furious. I can't forgive my mother for not helping her other son. Why she never told me anything? How could she have such a heart of stone to cause so much harm? To ruin so many lives at once? Every day she has delicacies for breakfast, not worrying whether her own flesh and blood is hungry right now. Couldn't she just communicate, be humane and caring? She admitted why she treated me so coldly in childhood. I was a constant reminder of her sin. But what now? She has cancer, and her life is measured in months, so what's the point of blaming her? I guess it's her punishment for everything she has done. Andrea was shocked, tears streamed down her cheeks, and she couldn't utter a word. She looked at Victor and remembered her Federico. It seemed as if he was standing before her, alive. Just reach out. She wanted him to hug her, to hold her like before, to caress her red curls and whisper, "You are my sunshine, my little treasure." Late in the evening, when Esperanza had already fallen asleep, the woman took Victor's gift in her hands. She carefully unwrapped it and gasped. Inside was a stunning mint-colored dress made of a soft and pleasant material. Andrea couldn't resist and tried it on. She looked in the mirror and admired herself. It suited her green eyes perfectly and fit her figure perfectly. She twirled dreamily in front of the mirror, then took it off and sighed, "It's a great dress. But where would I wear it? Cleaning yards or washing entrances? Oh, my wretched fate. Nevertheless, her heart felt warm from the fact that Victor cared not only for her daughter but also for her. She had already forgotten what it was like to receive attention from a man. And she worried, "I'm ungrateful, I didn't even say thank you." Victor conducted the genetic test, and it confirmed that Esperanza was his daughter. From that moment on, Andrea and Esperanza's lives turned upside down, becoming like a beautiful fairy tale. Victor bought a well-appointed apartment specifically for his daughter, and Andrea moved there with her. She no longer worked as a janitor. Victor made her a secretary in his company. But before that, like a storyteller or magician, he worked on Andrea's image and took her to a beauty salon, saying to the girls, "Make her shine like the brightest star." Life smiled upon Andrea and her daughter, and their days became filled with happiness and joy. The hardships of the past gradually faded away in the light of this newfound love and care. Dear ladies, your task is to provide this woman with the maximum pleasant sensations and do everything as she desires. Oh, my! Andrea felt like she was on cloud nine with happiness. She completely relaxed and entrusted herself to the skillful hands of the cosmetologists. She thought to herself, "Not long ago, I was sleeping on a bench in the rain, thinking my life was over. And now, I'm in a fashionable salon, living in a luxurious apartment, having a good job, and my beloved daughter." Life is such an unpredictable thing. When the woman looked at herself in the mirror 2 hours later, she was amazed. Instead of a tired, 35-year-old beggar worn out by life and heavy work, she saw a sophisticated and respectable lady. They gave her a beautiful hairstyle, trimmed her bangs, refreshed her face with a mask, applied light daytime makeup, and a gentle manicure. In the adjacent clothing salon, they picked out several dresses and stylish trouser suits, along with matching shoes and accessories. She had never felt like such a queen. Waiting for her in the car, Victor whistled when she finally emerged from the salon. His heart raced at the sight of such a beauty. He couldn't hold back and said, "Oh, Andrea, you look so splendid. I think I've fallen in love, completely and irrevocably." The woman blushed. She found the compliments very pleasant and replied, "Oh, come on. Thank you for everything, Victor. You are like a genie, like a kind wizard who burst into our lives, mine and Esperanza's, and painted it with bright colors. I couldn't have dreamed of a father like you for her. She has grown so attached to you. Maybe it's time to tell her the truth?" Victor took her hand, looked into her eyes, and said tenderly, "Andrea, listen. Our destinies have become so tightly intertwined, and Esperanza has bound them firmly. How do you feel about us becoming one family? I wouldn't mind it. I believe Esperanza wouldn't mind either. What do you say? I won't force you, but I really want to raise our daughter together. I miss her so much and count the seconds until our next meeting." The woman froze, her legs even trembled. She had a strong liking for Victor as he was the spitting image of her late husband, and as a person, he was excellent. Generous, caring, he was the kind of husband one could only dream of. Was all of this really happening to her? With a trembling voice, she replied, "I agree. Let's give it a try. We just need to somehow prepare our daughter. How do we tell her all this?" "I can't imagine." Victor answered, "I believe in always telling the truth to everyone, so we need to be straightforward. Esperanza is a clever girl. I think she will understand everything." In the evening after dinner, Victor finally mustered the courage and approached Esperanza, who was diligently doing her homework, and said, "Esperanza, we need to talk to you. Your mother and I have decided to get married because I am your real dad. We love each other and want to take care of you together. After all, you are our little son and beloved daughter. How do you feel about that?" With bated breath, Andrea watched Esperanza, her heart pounding with apprehension. Would the revelation shatter the world she had so carefully constructed for her daughter? But, instead of tears or confusion, Esperanza's face lit up like the morning sun. She raced into Victor's waiting arms, exclaiming, "I had this feeling in my heart. You were the kind soul behind that enchanting doll, weren't you? Does this mean we're like the families in storybooks? With grandparents who tell tales by the fireplace?" Victor's laughter, rich and heartfelt, echoed in the chilly air. Absolutely, he whispered, pressing a tender kiss on Esperanza's forehead. Tomorrow, my love, you'll meet a grandfather who has traveled the world and will regale you with tales of his adventures. You're going to adore him. Andrea, her fears melting away, wore a smile as warm as summer. All right, newfound family, she chimed, hands washed, and to the table. Once lessons are complete, how about a spirited game of bingo? The room echoed with laughter as they all signaled their eager agreement. They then proceeded to the heart of the home, the dining table, unified in a newfound happiness. For Andrea, it felt as if she had been transported back to a time when life was simpler and sweeter. The weight of past sorrows seemed to lift, replaced by the euphoria of the present. The world now held a hue of promise, and Andrea reveled in the newfound harmony. Esperanza, now attending a prestigious school with an emphasis on mastering the English language, shone brilliantly, her potential evident in every accomplishment. Andrea too found her stride, transitioning seamlessly into her new role. Though the early days were filled with mountains of paperwork and occasional missteps, she eventually flourished, becoming an indispensable asset. And Victor, every evening, would race home, drawn by the allure of a loving family and the tantalizing aromas of a home-cooked meal. Andrea was the bedrock of their newfound happiness, her patience and grace a guiding light. Late at night, in the quiet moments, she would send silent thanks to Federico. "Thank you, my love," she'd whisper to the stars, "for watching over me, guiding me to Victor, and ensuring that love always found its way home."
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.